Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. Today we are going to be talking to author Shifa Saltagi Safadi, and I'm excited to be talking with her. We come here every Thursday, 2 o'clock Eastern. Occasionally we have to change the time, but usually 2 o'clock Eastern. That's 11 a.m. here in the Pacific. To hello, to tell you about all these wonderful, diverse authors and illustrators, publishers of diverse books, and find out the story behind the story. So we're going to be talking to Shifa about her new book, Kareem Between. Questions, let us know in the comments. I'll keep an eye on those. And we're going to find out about that. And like I said, we do this every week. So please come and join us and help support these wonderful creators. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing really well. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to actually meet you after emailing with you for a while and enjoy you. Well, to go ahead, why don't we go ahead and jump in, and you can introduce yourself and tell us, what was your journey to becoming an author? Was that something you always thought you would like to do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've always been an avid reader since I was a little girl. Like I remember my earliest memories are me stacking my bookshelves with Nancy Drew mysteries and just my dad would always go to all the garage sales nearby and get me books. And um even I remember like in second grade, like getting picture books at school and just being so excited about reading. So I always wanted to be an author. And I know in like inside that was just a dream of mine because I love books, but I don't know that I thought I could do it.
Mm,
Like I was an ESL learner, so I was a mostly an Arabic speaker, Arabic language learner at home. So to learn English, I had to go to extra classes at school, and so like there was that part of it where am I good enough at English?
right,
And then also I think growing up not seeing Muslims and Arabs in books.
right,
I didn't even like consider that it was a possibility.
right.
Like, even when I started like writing stories, I would write them like with like stories about people that weren't like me. There were more Western stories, like, kind of like predominantly white stories and stories that I would see, I would emulate that because I didn't know that stories like me, who would want to read them? So, yeah, I mean, it took a long time to kind of find my confidence and believe that like Muslim stories and Arab stories are so important for me and for other kids.
Well, what gave you that push to make you say, okay, I can be an author and I can do it telling stories that are meaningful and authentic to my experiences?
Like honestly, seeing it done because like before I saw Muslim books, I had like I went I majored in English in college, so I knew I loved books. Like this was
Right.
just no doubt for me. And my specialty was Shakespeare, and I remember just,
Mhm.
loving like other books and stuff. But then, after I graduated, I had a few kids, and I wasn't really like writing or anything until one day my kids they loved books and I wanted to look for Muslim books and I found one. I found like a few picture books at the time. I think there was a Curious George Ramadan book and there was a few like really early and there were a few self-published ones, a few Muslim published ones. And so I ordered them off Amazon at the time. I didn't know there were indie booksellers or Muslim booksellers that sold these yet. So I ordered a few, and when they came, I mean, I was floored. I was like, wow, like this was the first time. I mean, I was crying, and my kids were like, what's wrong with our mom? But I was so pleased. And so when I read it to my kids and I started seeing them be so pleased to see their identities reflected at them. And then I started feeling like maybe I can do this. I remembered my dream and I wanted to, give it a try. So I started working towards that very long dream. That was like in 2018 when I
Wow.
started. Yeah,
Well,
it takes
lucky
a
for
long
us that you
time.
did, and I think it's interesting too because I think you started off as a book reviewer, right?
Yes, that's like it's kind of like all related, my whole journey because my sister she was like, "Oh, you should share like no one knows that there's Muslim books out there."
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'll start sharing them. And so I started like searching for them, seeking them out, following authors, sharing them more and more. And at the same time, I was writing my own stories, querying and taking courses. So it's amazing. Like I feel like until now, I don't view other authors as like competition or anything. I think it's like a community, and being in community with authors, other authors, reading their books, being inspired by them, all of us, providing it back to our community. It's like all connected because you get inspired and then you get like these beautiful connections, advice with other authors.
Right.
It all really inspired me to be an author, honestly.
Oh, that's so beautiful to hear about, like how supportive and how
Absolutely.
inspiring it is. And actually that leads to my question, as a book reviewer, do you think that gave you a different perspective as an author?
I think so because I also, like, as a book reviewer, I think I dealt with the readership first before I dealt with the publishing side of it because it took me a long time to figure out my own querying journey and stuff. But because I dealt with parents a lot who were asking, like, what is this book? Like, what does it have? What is it about? Is it worth like my money? Is it worth me getting for my family? I started feeling like I have a little bit of like not experience, but like I see what Muslim parents are asking for.
Right.
So, in turn, that does inform me. Like, I feel like when I'm writing my books, I'm like, what part of the market can this book fill?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always thinking about my marketing brain is always on, I feel like. So, I mean, I think like my platform, it does really like kind of like, I don't review as much anymore, but it does provide like my old reviews and it helps me like with seeing like that, what books like are still missing because there's still so many books that we need to write.
Right. Right. Well, what do you see as the gaps? Because I mean, like you said, things have improved a lot, and I'm sure you've been in
Absolutely.
space for a long time, either as a reviewer or as an author. What do you see as how it's changed over the last, I don't know, however many years?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think like I've noticed that the amount of books being published, they're not increasing that much. Like I noticed like last year and the year before, I noticed actually a drop in the amount of Muslim and Arab books being published. I don't know if it's because like just like the amount of books that are being acquired, or maybe it's just like and during COVID year, everyone was writing, and there was such an large amount of books that were sent to me that year. I remember not being able to make it through. So it is less, but at the same time, I do see that authors are braver. I mean, I feel like more stories are being told about our experiences unapologetically. There's like less glossaries, less definitions, more inclusion of culture, more inclusion of language, and just joyous stories, stories about food, stories about holidays. So, I think that we are getting more and more books and you know, I still think we do have a way to go. As I said, I feel like the amount of books I'm seeing are a little bit less, but I'm hoping that we see more and more come.
Well, I hope so. And you are, of course, contributing to that.
Thank
So
you.
let's jump in. I want to talk about your new book, Kareem Between.
Yes.
Tell us all about it and what was your inspiration?
So, Kareem Between is my first middle grade novel in verse, and it was inspired by like my own self, honestly, kind of just growing up Muslim in America, and growing up feeling like, and I'm Syrian American, so I was born in Syria, and we came to America when I was a little girl, and I remember feeling like I didn't fit in anywhere, like when we would visit Syria in the summers, my Arabic was like broken by the time I was like a teenager because it was just my English started to take over my tongue, and then culturally there were differences, and I felt like it was not like fully home anymore. But at the same time in America, I felt like this is my home, but at the same time, like you'd see, like, I was a little girl when 9/11 happened. I
Right.
wore hijab for the first time, and there was a lot of Islamophobia. I dealt with a lot of people being like, do you speak English, or do you should go back to where you came from. That was like a usual word I heard all the time.
Mhm.
And then just like, kind of like trying to figure out where do you belong. And I wanted kids to know that they do belong. And so that's where the inspiration behind Getting in Between comes, that, you know, you don't have to like fully feel like you have to blend in or look like everybody else to belong. And that's what Kareem figures out. You know, he bounces between English and Arabic in the text. And even with the verse, I have it going from right to left and left to right to signify his two worlds.
Right.
And so towards the end, the words merge on the page in the
Oh,
center. And it shows how like he felt stuck in between these two worlds. He felt stuck in between Syrian and American, but it's not a bad thing. You know, he realizes that being both of those and all of those different parts of himself, they just, you know, give him more like, you know, more pride and confidence in who he is. And he doesn't have to like be one or the other. He can be both. And I think
right.
that's what I wanted to convey to kids, that to be proud of their heritage and proud of who they are.
I love it because I think that's something that so many kids go through,
Yes,
whether it's Arab American or any other children of immigrants. But what
absolutely.
I thought was fascinating is also, I mean, it's a middle grade book, and right
Mhm.
in there, I think this age is all about
Oh,
being
yes.
in between childhood and adulthood, in between following what your family wants to do and what your friends want to do. So it's
Absolutely.
interesting to explore that with this age. And I think this is your first middle grade book, right?
Yes, yes.
So is it hard for you to make that transition, or did that just feel like such a natural fit for this story?
You know, I I wanted to write middle grade for as long as I've been writing picture books, but I just started a few. You know, a lot of authors have this where they start books and they never go anywhere. I have two middle grades that I wrote, but like they haven't made it out of the file on my
Right.
computer. I've never sent them anywhere because the plot wasn't developed. You know, I just never could figure it out. So with Getting Between, I was determined. I was like, I'm gonna do this. I need to figure out how to write middle grade. So I committed myself to taking as many courses as I could. And I took Storyteller Academy courses. I, you know, looked up every single writing craft book I could, and I learned about plotting. And so with picture books, there is that plot and those emotional beats, but with middle grade, you really have to nail them down. And so like it took a longer time to figure out, and the whole time I'm telling myself, and this is something I should probably stop, but I don't know if I ever will, but the whole time I'm telling myself, I can't do this, I can't do this. And, you know,
But
it's
now you
when I,
have, so
yes.
yeah.
And surprisingly enough, when it came, like I'm writing, I'm working on my second book, and I'm like, what if I only did it once and I can't do it again? Like, it's like it never stops. And I have to tell myself, no, you can do it. Just trust the journey, trust the process. And, you know, you have to like the book, like it's a very long book and it takes like a lot. So you have to trust that each word will eventually lead to a goal. It's not instant gratification. It has to be a journey. So I keep telling myself, like, you did it once, you can do it again. So
Why did you decide to do a novel in verse?
oh my gosh. So I love verse. I love poetry. Like it's to me it's accessible because I feel like kids these days have shorter attention spans, you know, and you know, the feeling of finishing a book is the best feeling, special feeling. So to me, like I felt like it was shorter, so easier for kids to read. The poetry is like music to my ears, so I love like the rhythm and the lyricism. But again, I didn't think I could do it. So I actually submitted a prose version because I wrote this book in prose first. And I submitted it to a mentor who I was taking a workshop with. And the mentor was like, do you want to try this in a different format? It doesn't feel, the voice doesn't feel there. And I'm like, you know, I've always loved verse, but I don't know if I can do it. And she was like, try it, try the verse and see what happens. So I did. I took one chapter and I turned it into a few poems in verse and I sent them back to her and she was like, this is it. This is the
Wow.
voice. And so I went and rewrote the whole book in verse.
Wow.
And so again, I had to get over my whole like mentality that I can't do it, that I'm not poetic enough.
Hmm.
And now I just want to like every time, you know, if writers are interested in verse, I really want them to know that, you know, free verse is it's free. You don't have to overthink it. Like write from your heart, you know. You don't yes, there is rhythm and poetry, but the confidence is what helps the words flow, you know. And sometimes we write free verse because it's what we love, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. Oh, I love that. And I wonder, do you feel like it was the emotion was able to come
Yes.
across more like with verse than?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I love verse. Like, verse novels, they carry so much emotion because they're first person, and then you feel like you're right there in the heart of the main character.
Mhm.
And so, like, I felt like I immediately was able to tap into Kareem's voice and,
Right.
you know, speak through him. So, and then even like you feel like they're very similar to picture books for me, because
Hmm.
with picture books, you have this whole story and this whole emotional and plot arc that you have to fit into like 500-600 words,
Right.
and you have to do it with little words but a lot of impact.
Right.
You know, and so for me a verse novel was similar. Like I had to fit in so much meaning and emotion and do it in little words. So I feel like I really paid attention to how each word was on the page, you know, the visual aspects of it, and how the word would end and how the poem would end, and try to make it feel like make that impact on the main on the reader.
And especially how you talked about like the English and like
Yes.
having to go separate. I love that.
I love the visuality of verse. My favorite verse novels, they contain visual images where you can see like pictures like trees or raindrops with words. And in Getting Between, the last not the last verse is the last poem is in the image of a trophy, and it just shows like that kind of victory for Kareem in the end. And I love being able to use like words like art.
Hmm. I love that. Oh, well, it's just out. I haven't had a chance to get my copy because it's still on order at our library, but I
Yes,
can't wait
yes.
to read it. So everybody, and you mentioned you were working on another one. Is it going to be
Yes.
a follow-up to Kareem Between? Is it a different
It's a
set of
different
characters? Can you tell us the
novel. It's
characters?
in verse, but
Okay.
it's very different, very, very different. I feel like Kareem is this sweet, very like, you know, very sweet character. My second one, I don't know if I can talk about it that much yet, but there's like a complete pivot in the main characters. They're like very, very different in personality.
Oh, well,
But hope readers like them. There's a lot of stories I hope that readers like to read.
and do you think that you'll also go back to picture books?
Yes, so actually in February of 2025, I have a picture book coming out with Holiday House on Eid,
Yeah.
and it's set in Syria.
Um,
And then I have a chapter book series as well coming next year, and it's about it's a young Syrian refugee girl as well, and kind of like it's a STEM twist, so it's like science recipes and science experiments and Syrian recipes, and I think young readers are going to really adore that series as well.
and when does that come out?
That comes out, the first two books are in May of next year, and then the third and fourth book are in fall of 2025. So it's a
Oh,
four-book series.
well, when we see when it comes out, we'll be sure to share about it in our
Thank
stories. And thank you so much
you.
for joining us here today. It was so fun to talk
Thank
with you.
you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
And for anybody, if you joined us late, don't worry, it's all going to be up on Instagram in a few minutes, and later we'll have it on our YouTube channel. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Good to talk to you. Bye,
Have a good day.
everybody.
Bye.